My name is Sharon Foster, and in hindsight, I should have been wary of the warmth in my brother's invitation. The drive from Vermont to Riverside, Connecticut, had taken 4 hours. 4 hours of Maverick humming along to classic rock while our daughter Willa read in the back seat, completely absorbed in her well-worn copy of Anne of Green Gables. 4 hours of our son Jude asking every 30 minutes if we had arrived yet, his excitement to see Uncle Reed bubbling over like soda left too long in the sun. Maverick dressed as he always did. A soft chambray shirt from LL Bean, khakis that had seen better days but fit perfectly, and the brown leather loafers he'd resoled twice before claiming they were finally broken in. His salt and pepper hair was slightly tousled from the drive, and his easy smile reflected a man at complete ease with himself. I had chosen a simple cream silk blouse and navy slacks, accessorized with my grandmother's pearl earrings. Willa wore a vintage Ralph Lauren dress I'd found at an estate sale, soft pink with delicate embroidery, a quality piece that would last decades. Jude wore his favorite polo in pressed khakis, looking like a miniature catalog model, though he'd already wrinkled the front by the time we arrived shortly after 7 in the evening. The mansion loomed ahead, straight out of a movie, white columns gleaming in the fading light, windows lit with chandeliers, a perfectly manicured lawn, luxury cars circling the driveway, Mercedes, BMWs, a Bentley that likely cost more than most houses. Wow! Uncle Reed lives here? He rents here. Jude pressed his face against the window. I corrected him gently, though a knot had already formed in my stomach. Maverick said nothing, but I noticed the slight narrowing of his eyes as he took in the scene, that observant look he always got when cataloging details for his writing, or so everyone thought. I knew better. He was always watching, always calculating, though few suspected that the quiet man who called himself a freelance nature writer was anything beyond that. We parked between a Tesla and a Jaguar. Our Volvo, reliable and 8 years old, looked more like the help's car. The party spread across the grand terrace and lawn, women in designer dresses likely worth 6 months of groceries, men in suits sharp enough to cut glass. The air smelled of expensive perfume, champagne, and an indefinable mix of privilege that made you feel like you were breathing a different atmosphere. We climbed the stone steps. Willa's hand found mine, slightly clammy. At 9, she could sense when she didn't fit in, though she'd never say so. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," I whispered. She squeezed my hand in return. A coordinator with a clipboard intercepted us, her smile polite but not reaching her eyes. "Names, please." "Sharon Foster. This is my husband, Maverick Miller, and our children." She scanned her list, her expression almost imperceptibly cool, not rude. Yes, the Vermont family right this way." Maverick's hand rested lightly on my lower back as we followed her through the crowd. We passed the VIP section, a raised area of a terrace with the best view and lighting, intimate cocktail tables draped in ivory linen. That's where I spotted Reed, my younger brother, introducing us to his fiancée's circle. We had driven 4 hours. I had brought a first edition book for Helen, something I thought she'd cherish. But Reed's eyes flickered with a look I'd never seen before, embarrassment. He glanced around at the perfectly polished guests radiating new money confidence, then back at us in our LL Bean and vintage Ralph Lauren. He didn't move. The coordinator guided us past the VIP area, beyond the main seating with its strategic view of the bar and dance floor, and even past the secondary tables. We ended up at a round table tucked in the corner near the kitchen, where servers hurried by with trays and the music was muffled by the wall. The lighting was dimmer here, and our view was mostly the service entrance. This was the edge of the party. "Enjoy the event," the coordinator said, already turning away. Maverick pulled out a chair for me, moving slowly and deliberately. He helped Willa into her seat, then Jude. When he finally sat beside me, he was quiet, but I noticed his jaw tightened slightly, just enough. "Mom, why are we by the kitchen?" Willa asked softly. "It's fine, honey. We can see everything from here." I lied, keeping my voice cheerful. But we both knew the truth. The seating was intentional, a statement. Across the terrace, Reed laughed at something a guest said, champagne flute raised, not glancing our way again. Maverick leaned back, fingers tapping lightly on the tablecloth. To an observer, he seemed relaxed, mildly interested. But I knew that look. After 12 years of marriage, I recognized it. He was taking notes, and Maverick Miller's notes always had consequences. The party moved around us like a well-oiled machine we weren't meant to understand. Waiters passed our corner table with barely a glance, trays angled toward the VIPs. Laughter floated from the terrace center, where Reed and Helen held court under Edison bulbs that bathed everyone in warm, flattering light. Our corner caught only fluorescent spillover from the kitchen. Jude kicked his feet under the table, still excited despite our exile. "When do we eat?" "I'm starving." "Soon, buddy," Maverick said, ruffling his hair. He kept that easy demeanor, but I noticed he positioned his chair at a slight angle to watch the whole room. The writer's instinct, people always said, always observing. If only they knew. Movement drew my attention. Helen glided toward us, her champagne-colored dress catching the light. She was beautiful in a calculated way, every hair perfect, makeup precise, jewelry clearly expensive without needing explanation. At 28, she had mastered looking costly. She stopped at our table, her smile fixed like a crown. "Sharon!" Her tone carried that familiar false warmth, the one usually preceding a pointed remark disguised as concern. "I'm so glad you made it all the way from Vermont. Must have been quite the journey." 4 hours, I replied evenly. "Not bad at all." "Well, you're braver than me. I couldn't imagine living so far from civilization," she laughed, a tinkling sound. "But I suppose that's the artistic lifestyle, isn't it? Reed told me you work for a nonprofit. That must be fulfilling." The way she said fulfilling made it sound like a consolation prize. Maverick's hand found mine under the table, his thumb brushing my knuckles. "A quiet reminder, let her talk." "It is," I said simply. Helen's gaze swept over our children, lingering on Willa's dress. "And this must be your daughter. Such a sweet, vintage dress. Very quaint." Willa's smile faltered. At 9, she couldn't fully grasp the insult hidden in the compliment, but she felt it. "It's Ralph Lauren," I said measured. "From the 80s. Better quality than most things today." "Oh, absolutely. Vintage can be charming," Helen said, her smile sharpening. "But people here usually prefer current collections, straight from the runway. Still, there's something to be said for making do with what you have. Very resourceful. As if we were scraping by out of necessity rather than choice." A waiter appeared at the VIP section with a tray of canapes. Helen excused herself gracefully and returned moments later, guiding a small group toward our table like a safari guide pointing out exotic creatures. "Everyone, this is Sharon Reed's sister," she said, gesturing with her champagne flute. "She lives secluded in Vermont to find artistic inspiration and works for a nonprofit. A life that is, well, very chill, but surely a bit removed from our fast-paced world, isn't it?" The guest smiled politely, eyes gliding over us with practiced indifference. I could read her narrative. The sister who couldn't handle the real world fled to the countryside to play at rustic, now attending events to remind herself of what she'd left behind or failed to achieve. "Actually," Maverick said calmly, his first words since Helen arrived, "Sharon manages complex projects with multiple stakeholders and 7-figure budgets. The nonprofit sector moves fast, though with less focus on profit margins." His tone was warm and conversational, yet there was a quiet firmness beneath it, one most people failed to notice. Maverick had mastered the art of seeming harmless. Helen's smile remained steady. "Of course, nonprofits are vital. Though I imagine the salary must be modest compared to the private sector." "That's the sacrifice for passion, isn't it?" she added, moving on before I could reply, her entourage trailing behind like ducklings. Jude tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, I'm really hungry. Can I try one of those things they're carrying?" The buffet near the VIP zone gleamed with delicacies under soft warming lights. Jude was already sliding from his chair when Helen appeared again, seemingly drawn by his interest. "Oh, Jude!" She crouched to his level, her dress cascading around her like liquid gold. "I'm not sure those appetizers suit you, sweetheart." "Why not?" Jude asked innocently. "They're foie gras and caviar, an acquired taste. Without a trained palate, they may be hard to enjoy." She tilted her head sympathetically. "Tell you what, I'll have the kitchen make something more suitable. Spaghetti? Fried chicken? I'm sure you're used to those at home." The implication lingered, Your family only knows simple fare, fast food. You don't quite belong here in any sense. Jude looked puzzled. I like trying new things. No need, Helen. I stood, resting my hand on Jude's shoulder, voice quiet but firm. The children will sit here and eat with their parents. We teach them to experience everything. They don't need to be separated. For the first time, Helen's smile faltered. I was only trying to help. We don't need help, I said, guiding Jude back to his chair. Helen straightened, her expression cooling. She glanced at Maverick, perhaps expecting him to intervene, but he simply smiled blandly, unreadable as always. Suit yourself, she finally said, though I'd hate for the children to be uncomfortable. She swept away, leaving a trail of perfume and unspoken judgment. The table fell silent. Willa fiddled with her napkin, Jude's excitement dimming. Across the terrace, Reed remained immersed in his VIP world, laughing and toasting, oblivious, or willfully blind, to his fiancée's treatment of our family. Maverick leaned toward Jude. Hey buddy, want a secret? Jude nodded eagerly. The best food at parties is whatever you enjoy most. Caviar or chicken fingers, it doesn't matter. If it makes you happy, it's the best. He winked. Between us, I'd pick a good burger over fish eggs any day. Jude giggled, some sparkle returning. But I noticed Maverick watching Helen across the terrace, jaw tightening slightly. My husband, patient, observant, slow to anger, was fiercely protective. Someone had just insulted his children, and Helen had no idea the impact of her words. By 10 minutes to 8, the party peaked, but at our table, I was halfway explaining to Jude why he couldn't have a third canopy when I noticed Willa's chair was empty. My daughter had excused herself to the restroom 10 minutes prior, and a knot formed in my stomach. I scanned the crowd for her blonde hair, her vintage Ralph Lauren cardigan, pristine. A rare find, even finer than anything in Helen's wardrobe. Then I saw her, walking back toward our corner, but something was off. Her shoulders hunched, arms wrapped around herself as if to disappear. Even from a distance, I saw the redness around her eyes and her rapid blinking. She slid into her chair without meeting my gaze. Willa! I leaned closer, voice low. Honey, what happened? She shook her head, jaw tight. I knew immediately it was serious. Willa rarely cries, holding everything inside until it bursts. Sweetheart, talk to me. Her voice was barely audible, strangled. Can we just go home? My heart ached. What happened? Some kids by the bathroom. They were maybe 12 or 13. They pointed at my shoes. I looked down at her feet. Suede flats, soft taupe, classic silhouette, worn but well cared for. I'd bought them at a vintage boutique in Vermont, quality that lasts. They said I was wearing poor person's shoes, she whispered, voice breaking. They asked if we got them from a donation bin because they looked old. White-hot rage surged through me instantly. My 9-year-old daughter, brilliant and sensitive, reading 3 grades above her level, volunteering every weekend, mocked for her shoes that I reach for her hand, but before I can say a word, the sharp click of heels echoes across the marble. Helen appears at our table with the precision of a predator sensing weakness. Oh dear, is everything all right? Her voice carries fake concern, just loud enough to draw glances from nearby diners. We're fine, I reply flatly. Are you sure? She presses, her gaze flicking to Willa. Because she seems upset. Helen tilts her head, her face a practiced mask of sympathy. Did something happen? I start, but Willa speaks first, her voice small and hesitant. Some girls made fun of my shoes. Helen's eyes briefly drift to Willa's suede flats, and I catch a fleeting hint of satisfaction before she settles her expression into one of understanding. Oh, sweetheart, she murmurs, crouching to meet Willa's eyes in a show of compassion. Children here are raised differently. Their parents are business leaders, philanthropists. They're groomed for Yale, for Harvard. They have very refined standards. My hands clench under the table. Helen's voice grows even more instructive. Honestly, Sharon, I've worried about this. These children aren't used to environments like this. Living so isolated in Vermont, without exposure to proper social settings, it causes culture shock. They don't understand the expectations. Her words hang in the air like poison. She's not defending Willa. She's defending the bullies. Maybe next time, Helen adds, standing and smoothing her dress. You could prepare them better? Make sure their clothes are suitable for the occasion. It would save everyone the awkwardness. The eyes of the crowd press in. I feel their judgment, their gaze on my children. Helen's message is clear. This is your fault, Sharon. You brought your rustic children to a place they don't belong, dressed them poorly, and now everyone is uncomfortable. My body trembles. I want to shout, to tell her exactly what I think of her so-called refinement, to drag her outside. But I'm frozen. Reed is here somewhere in the crowd, my only brother. If I cause a scene at his engagement party, I'll be the villain. I stand abruptly, the chair scraping beneath me. Helen's smile widens, triumphant. She thinks she has won. Then Maverick rises. The change is immediate, intimidating. Gone is the quiet, gentle man who ate dinner in silence. The room feels colder by 10 degrees. He stands tall, moving with precise control, forcing people to instinctively step back. He doesn't speak. He simply adjusts his suit jacket, the silence stretching outward like ripples on water. Conversations stall. Glasses pause midair. Maverick doesn't look at Helen. His gaze is on me, calm, cold, and unwavering. In his eyes is a question we've silently asked each other countless times over 17 years. Have you had enough? The same look he gave when I told him about the harassment at my old job, the same one before he quietly made a call that led to my former boss being audited by the IRS. I think of Willa's red eyes, Jude's confusion over missing a burger, being shoved into a dark corner while Helen paraded in a dress worth more than our monthly groceries. I think of my brother, whom I drove 4 hours to celebrate, who hasn't once checked on us. I meet Maverick's gaze and nod. The decision is made. Helen's confident smile falters. She takes a hesitant step back, eyes darting between us, suddenly uncertain that Maverick's expression remains calm. He reaches down, lifting Willa out of her chair with careful gentleness, then does the same for Jude. We're leaving, I say, my voice steady. In that moment, supported by my husband's quiet strength and holding my children's hands, I prioritize their dignity over my brother's party. I choose us. Nearby conversations pause. I feel the shift of attention, the quiet murmurs beginning. Helen's uncertainty vanishes, replaced by a barely hidden sense of triumph. She straightens, her full smile returning. You know what? That's probably the smartest choice you could make right now, she says, her voice carrying to the gathering crowd of guests pretending not to stare. This is my house. Mine and Reed's. I need to maintain a certain image. For our business partners. Our investors. She emphasizes the last words, letting them resonate. My house. My house. My house. The claim lingers, firm and territorial. She isn't just dismissing us, she's evicting us, as if we're trespassers. I reach for Willa's small purse when I catch a flicker on Maverick's face. Not anger, not annoyance, but a brief smirk. It vanishes almost instantly, but I recognize it. I've seen it only 3 times in our marriage. Once before a hostile takeover, once before dismantling a competitor, and once before outbidding a Russian oligarch in Manhattan. It's the look of a man who has gotten exactly what he wanted. Sharon? Sharon! Reed's voice cuts through the murmur. He pushes through the crowd, his face flushed, tie slightly crooked, looking exhausted from maintaining appearances all night. What's going on? He reaches us, eyes shifting between me and Helen. Why are you leaving already? Helen changes her tone immediately, hand to her chest in mock innocence. Oh, Reed, honey, it's not. I mean, Sharon said she wanted to leave. She's just not comfortable here. She trails off, letting him infer the rest. Your sister doesn't fit in. Reed's face tightens with guilt and confusion. Sharon, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for you to feel. He runs a hand through his hair. Maybe you should take the kids back to the hotel? Let them rest. You must be tired from the drive and... He's apologizing to me for Helen's behavior, completely unaware of the reality. My brother, standing in the mansion's grand foyer, surrounded by crystal, marble, and imported flowers, truly believes he owns this life, this party. He has no idea that every piece of furniture, every room, every aspect of this partnership exists because Maverick chose to be generous 3 years ago. Reed thinks he's the host, the master of the house. In truth, he's a tenant, and the lease is ending. It's fine, Reed, I say quietly, slipping my arm around Willa's shoulders. Well, get out of your way. No, no, it's not, he stammers, aware that people are watching and this doesn't look right. You came all this way. I wanted you here. Reed's sweetheart. Helen brushes his arm lightly, her voice smooth as honey. Let them go. Sharon clearly wants to leave, and we have guests waiting. The Castellanos were asking about the investment timeline. And as always, she redirects him, steering his attention elsewhere. Reed's shoulders slump in defeat. He casts me one last apologetic glance before letting himself be guided back to the center of the party, toward the lights, the laughter, and the people who truly matter in Helen's world. Maverick stands quietly beside me, methodically helping Jude into his jacket. Yet I catch that subtle twitch at the corner of his mouth when Helen said my house. Maverick? I murmur as we head toward the door. Not yet, he replies softly. His tone is calm, almost pleasant, but there's an underlying edge that raises the hairs on my neck. We near the foyer when Helen's voice rings behind us, bright and performative. Drive safely. And Sharon, maybe next time let us know if you need recommendations for children's clothing. I know some lovely, affordable boutiques. Polite laughter ripples through the crowd. Several guests watch openly now, champagne glasses in hand, intrigued by the unfolding drama. Willa's hand tightens around mine. Maverick halts mid-step. He doesn't turn or react outwardly. Yet the air shifts, a change in pressure, like a storm moments before it breaks. He slides his phone from his jacket pocket, casually, deliberately. He scrolls briefly, then speaks, his voice cutting smoothly across the marble foyer. Actually, he says, before we go, there's something I need to discuss with Reed. The room falls silent. Helen's smile freezes. I'm sorry, what? Maverick finally turns, his expression pleasant, professional, the look of someone about to address a minor contractual matter. Reed? He calls. Could you come here for a moment? It's about the house. My brother pushes through the crowd, bewildered. The house? What about? The lease, Maverick says simply. I wanted to give you proper notice in person, since we're all here. Reed blinks. Notice? What notice? And just like that, the trap closes. The party's hum fades into background noise as Maverick steps forward. Something has changed. The quiet, friendly writer is gone, replaced by a man who moves with the authority of someone accustomed to boardrooms where millions shift with a signature. Reed? Maverick's voice is low but commanding, drawing several guests' attention. Do you remember the parent company on the lease you signed? Reed blinks, confusion overtaking his previous embarrassment. What? Why now? Just answer the question, Maverick says, patient yet unyielding. Reed furrows his brow, searching his memory. I think it's Ironwood Holdings. I honestly don't recall the details. I signed through the agent 3 years ago. Is there an issue with the property management or something? Maverick's mouth twitches, almost a smile but not quite. He deliberately pulls out his phone, scrolls briefly, then tilts it toward Reed. Read it. Out loud. Reed leans in, squinting at the glowing screen. His lips move silently at first, then his voice emerges, shaky and unsure. Internal directive, dated April 2020. From V. Miller, Chairman. Subject, Foster Account Exception. He pauses, face paling. Approve exception for Reed Foster's residential file. Freeze 2020 rental rates indefinitely, regardless of market adjustments. Any difference between frozen rate and current market value is to be accounted for in the chairman's family charity adjustment account. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the string quartet seemed to sense the moment and allow their music to fade, leaving the terrace in complete stillness. I don't, Reed's voice faltered. What does this mean? Helen froze beside him, her champagne glass paused halfway to her lips. I watched understanding slowly appear on her face, spreading suddenly, like ice cracking across a frozen pond. It means, Maverick said, his voice clear across the quiet gathering, that the luxurious lifestyle you've enjoyed for the past 3 years has been heavily subsidized. The current market rate for this property is $4,200 per month. You've been paying $2,800, the frozen 2020 rate. That's a difference of $16,800 per year. Over 3 years, that amounts to $50,400 in effective charity. Reed stumbled backward as if physically hit. No, that's not. I can afford this place. I make good money. You do make a good salary, Maverick corrected gently. But you're not rich, Reed. You're what financial advisors call a high earner, not wealthy yet. You've been spending everything trying to maintain an image beyond your means. Without this subsidy, you couldn't afford this address, nor fund those European vacations, luxury car leases, and country club memberships Helen insisted on. I watched Reed's face crumble, realizing that every dismissive remark Helen made about people who don't understand quality and every sneer about knowing one's place had been built on charity from the very man she mocked all evening. Maverick turned to Helen, whose haughty composure had dissolved into raw vulnerability. You're right about one thing, Helen. Class cannot be faked. True class isn't about designer labels, knowing which fork to use, or showing off your expensive watch. It's about character, how you treat people when you believe they can't do anything for you. He paused, letting the words sink in. Around us, the guests stood transfixed, cocktails forgotten. The class you've been so proud of for 3 years, this address, this lifestyle, this social standing, has been funded by my family's charity. Every time you look down on someone for wearing LL Bean instead of Louis Vuitton, every time you judge someone's worth by their clothes or car, you did it from a position you didn't earn. You've been living on borrowed elegance. Helen's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. No one moved to clean it up. Now, Maverick continued, his voice crisp and businesslike, as chairman and majority owner of Ironwood Holdings, I am formally notifying you, Reed Foster, that I am exercising my right of non-renewal as outlined in Section 12, Paragraph 3 of your lease. Your current lease expires on the 30th of next month. You have exactly 30 days to secure housing that fits your actual budget. The repossession process will proceed according to Connecticut state law and your contract. Maverick, please, Reed's voice broke. You can't just... I'm not evicting you, Maverick said, his tone almost kind now. That would be cruel and unnecessary. I am simply declining to renew your lease at the end of its term, which is my legal right as the property owner. 30 days is more than enough to find appropriate housing. I'd suggest checking out the developments off Route 7. Nice places, good schools nearby, and much more in line with your actual income bracket. He slipped his phone back into the same khaki pockets Helen had mocked earlier for being tragically suburban and reached for my hand. As for whose house this is, he said, glancing at Helen with a hint of pity, I think that's been made clear. But don't worry, you have 30 days to enjoy it. I suggest making the most of them. The crowd parted as we moved toward the door, suddenly focused on shoes, drinks, or anything else but us. I felt their stares on our backs, could almost hear the mental recalculations as they reassessed everything they assumed about the quiet couple in practical clothes. At the door, Reed caught up, his face streaked with tears. Maverick, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know you were. Maverick paused, resting a firm but not unkind hand on Reed's shoulder. I know you didn't. That was intentional. But Reed, you need to understand something. Your value as a person has nothing to do with this address, or that car, or any of it. When you see your true worth in yourself without needing these props to prove it, then we can really talk. Until then. He didn't finish, didn't need to. The cool night air hit my face as we stepped outside, and I took a deep breath that felt like the first real one in hours. Behind us, the mansion glowed warmly, but the warmth was deceptive. I could still feel the chill of judgment that had filled every corner. Willa's hand squeezed mine as we walked to the car. Mama, are we leaving without saying goodbye? Sometimes, I said. The best goodbye is walking away with your head held high. Jude bounced on his toes, excitement replacing his earlier misery. Dad was so cool. Did you see in Helen's face? She looked like she swallowed a lemon. Jude, I said, but there was no real reproach in my voice. Maverick unlocked our practical, 7-year-old Subaru, dent in the rear bumper from my garage miscalculation, and we all climbed in. As he started the engine, I glanced back at the mansion one last time. Through the tall windows, figures moved, gathering, no doubt analyzing everything that had just happened. Reed stood on the steps. Helen was nowhere to be seen. I almost feel bad for him, I murmured. Don't, Maverick said, pulling out of the circular driveway. This is the kindest thing I could do. He's been living in a fantasy, and fantasies always end. Better to end it now, on our terms, than let him fall harder later. We drove in silence for a few minutes, leaving Riverside's manicured perfection behind. Then Willis' small voice came from the back seat. "Daddy, are we richer than Miss Helen?" I turned to look at her. In the passing streetlights, her expression was thoughtful, not proud, just trying to understand. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" she continued. "When she was being mean about our clothes?" Maverick caught her eye in the rearview mirror, that gentle smile I'd fallen in love with years ago. "That's a good question, sweetheart. Here's the thing. Being rich isn't about showing off or making sure everyone knows your money. It's not about yelling at waiters or making people feel small." He paused at a red light, looking at both kids. "True wealth is having the power to protect your family and set things right without raising your voice. It's being secure in who you are without needing approval from everyone else." Today I taught Miss Helen a lesson in respect, something all her money and designer clothes can't buy. "But she was so mean to you," Willis said softly. "She called your jacket tragic." "She did," Maverick agreed, facing forward as the light turned green. "And you know what? It's a 10-year-old jacket from LL Bean. The elbow patches are wearing thin, and it's not fashionable. But it's comfortable, keeps me warm, and reminds me who I really am beneath all the suits and board meetings. Sometimes the most expensive thing you can wear is authenticity." Jude, who had been unusually quiet, asked, "What's going to happen to Uncle Reed and Aunt Helen?" I thought carefully. They'll have to learn to stand on their own, to build a life based on what they actually have, not what they pretend to have. "Will Uncle Reed be okay?" Willa asked. I took a deep breath, believing my own words. "Your uncle is sharp and capable, especially when he's not trying so hard to impress." Maybe this is the wake-up call he needed. As for Helen, I hesitated. Maverick spoke softly. She made her choices. We all do. And then we live with them. The lights of Riverside dimmed behind us, giving way to darker roads and older trees, the authentic Connecticut that existed beyond the polished perfection of new money neighborhoods. Our headlights cut through the growing darkness, guiding us not to a mansion that demanded a trust fund to maintain, but to our Vermont farmhouse with its creaky floors, drafty windows, and garden where we grew real vegetables. Willa yawned, her head resting on Jude's shoulder. In the rearview mirror, I watched my children settle into the calm quiet of the ride home, the night's drama already fading from their minds. They would remember this evening, not as trauma but as a lesson. Maverick's hand found mine across the center console, his calloused rider's fingers intertwining with mine. Words weren't necessary. We had weathered the storm, protected our children, and emerged with our dignity intact. We hadn't won because of wealth. We had won because we knew ourselves, and no judgment from those living beyond their means could change that. The car moved forward into the peaceful night, leaving behind the sparkling facade of borrowed elegance, heading toward something real.